Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going on a little journey. We're going to learn how to unlock a hidden world that's literally all around you just by learning to read the secret language of the landscape itself. So let's dive right in.
You know how it is. You're out for a walk, maybe on a trail you've been on 100 times, and you see a certain kind of bird or a particular wildflower, and you just kind of know, yep, that belongs here. But have you ever really stopped to think about why? What makes that one spot the absolute perfect place for that one thing, but completely wrong for something else? Because here's the secret. Nature isn't random. Not at all. There's a deep logic to it.
And once you start to grasp that logic, well, it has some serious payoffs. I mean, if you're a birder or a botanist looking for something specific, knowing its home turf is basically your treasure map. If you catch just a quick glimpse of some mystery animal, understanding the environment helps you make a really educated guess about what it was. It helps you avoid common mistakes. It makes your time outdoors way richer. And honestly, it's absolutely fundamental if you care about conservation.
The key to this whole mystery, the one word that unlocks everything, is habitat. It's a word we all use, right? But really, truly understanding what it means, that changes how you see the entire world outside your window.
So, let's start decoding the landscape's secret language. And we'll begin with the big one. What even is a habitat?
On the surface, the dictionary definition is pretty simple, right? It's the natural home of an animal or a plant, the place you'd normally expect to find it. Simple enough. But what actually makes a place a natural home? Well, for a place to be a real home, it has to check some very important boxes. For an animal, you're talking about having the right kind of food and plenty of it. It needs shelter, a safe place to rest and raise a family. For a plant, it's a bit different. It's all about getting the right amount and type of light, enough water, the right minerals in the soil, and crucially, not being totally crowded out by its neighbors. Every single organism out there has this Goldilocks zone of conditions where it can really thrive.
Okay, so recognizing that every species has its own preferences, that leads us to the next big question. How do we make sense of all these different homes out there? Because nature is just so wonderfully diverse and complicated, right? So if we want to study it or, protect it effectively, we need a system. We need to classify things. It brings order to the chaos. It creates a kind of standard language, so two different scientists can look at the same piece of land and describe it in the exact same way. That's how you get consistent, objective results.
One pretty straightforward way to do this is to break things down into 7 main habitat types. First, you've got your woodland, which is all about those tall trees with a leafy canopy. Then there's scrub, which is similar but with smaller shrubs. You've got heathland, with its very specific acidic soils that things like gorse and heather just love. Then, of course, grassland. After that, you've got your water-based habitats, freshwater and coastal. And finally, a really interesting one, brownfield sites, which are basically artificial spots made by us humans.
So, how does this actually work when you're out in the field? Let's try to crack the code.
Let's just take a woodland, for example. So first, you ask the big, simple question. Am I surrounded by trees that are taller than 5 meters and form a canopy? Yep. Okay, step 1, it's woodland. Now, step 2, what kind of woodland? You look a bit closer. Are they mostly broadleaf trees, like oaks and ash? Or are they coniferous, like pines? And to keep it scientific, you apply a clear rule like the 90% rule. If more than 90% of the trees you see are deciduous, then bingo. You classify it as broadleaf woodland. It's a clear, repeatable system.
Okay, now this is where it gets really, really fun. Once you have a handle on classifying habitats, you can start using what are called indicator species. This is how you become a real nature detective.
So at the first level, the clues are super obvious, almost intuitive. You're walking and you're surrounded by big trees. You're in a woodland. You see a whole landscape painted in purple heather and bright yellow gorse. You're standing in heathland. This is your first big picture read of the landscape.
But then the detective work gets more detailed. You look closer for more specific clues. So it's not just woodland. What kind of woodland? Well, if you see a lot of ash and oak trees, that's a massive clue that you're in a classic, true broadleaf woodland. But what if you start seeing lots of alder and willow trees instead? Ah,
That's your indicator that the ground here is much wetter. You're probably in what we'd call a wet woodland. The specific species tell a more detailed story, and then you can zoom in even further to the level of the microhabitat. This is where certain species have carved out an incredibly specific little niche for themselves. Take the sea spleenwort fern. This little guy is a total specialist. You will almost only find it growing on rocks right there in the splash zone of the sea. Seeing it doesn't just tell you you're on the coast. It tells you that you are standing in that exact salty, wave-splashed microenvironment. It's amazing.
But you know, just like in any good detective story, the clues aren't always so straightforward. You've got to be ready to read between the lines.
Nature has curveballs. Some species are what we call generalists. They're perfectly happy in a few different habitat types. And sometimes you'll spot one single plant that's just a fluke, a rare vagrant that got there by chance. It's not a real indicator. And human influence is a huge one. Seeing a whole bunch of pine trees might just mean you're in a commercial plantation, not a natural forest. And you have to remember that some environments, like a rocky beach, are just naturally harsh. So seeing only a few species doesn't mean something's wrong. Context is everything.
And that brings us to a really profound and maybe even a little bit of a sobering thought. The reality is, in most places on Earth today, there really aren't any completely natural habitats left. Almost every single landscape, even the ones that feel incredibly wild and remote, is influenced by human activity in some way, shape, or form.
So, we've learned how to start reading the landscape, to understand its language and the incredible lives it supports. But ending on that thought, knowing our own fingerprints are on every single one of these habitats, that leaves us with one last really important question to chew on. If we really are a part of shaping every landscape, what does that mean for our responsibility to protect them? That's something to think about the next time you step outside.